All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Thicc Men Podcast. We have two honorary Thicc Men with us today. First, we got Dash. Do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, I'm Dash. I have a channel called The Bullet Train here on YouTube, and I just do Let's Plays of different games from usually a blind standpoint or from a game developer viewpoint.
Awesome. And then the Cyberbard, what is your story?
Yeah, my story is that I'm a fan of narratives of all sorts, whether it's in writing, literature, film, or the new modern narrative video games. So I do a lot of Let's Plays on my channel with games that have a narrative or story focus. So that's my story. What's yours?
That is his catchphrase. Okay, guys, that was the joke there, in case you're you're missing it. Okay, so if you guys want to check these guys out, they're going to be in the description, and also I'll link them at the end of the video. All right, so let's get into it. The topic for today is going to be stories, because the Cyberbard is a story man. You know what I'm saying? The bard, literally. Okay. All right. So, do you guys prefer linear narrative or branching games? So, you know how there's games like The Last of Us or Uncharted, where there's really only one outcome that you can go through, right? But then there's these other games. So, like Telltale games is a pretty good example, and Life is Strange too, where you have these branching stories that kind of go every which way, depending on your choices. Do you have a preference?
You want to take that one, Dash?
Sure. Yeah, I've always found myself kind of in the middle of that, but if I have a choice, I've always been very much for the narrative. If I play a game, I want to have a deep, engrossing story as it goes. It doesn't necessarily have to be linear. It can be a game such as like Mass Effect, where you've got a really awesome story, but then there's all kinds of side stuff you can do. But if it's like linear, talking about The Last of Us, to me that was an amazing. Pretty much anything that they make is
masterpiece,
really well done. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm huge fans of all that, but then occasionally I like to sit down and play something like Mario that just has like no story whatsoever, aside from stop Bowser again. I actually just started playing the Super Nintendo Mario World, and it's like, hey, Bowser's up to his old tricks. It's like, yep, that's Mario in a nutshell, and that's enough to get you going. So
yeah, and Cyberbard,
okay. Well, that's a tricky question, man, because whether it's a branching narrative or a linear narrative, I'm a fan of both. I have a really tough time choosing because there's great games being made with both examples, to be honest with you. I find a very satisfying linear narrative to be something that is less common nowadays, because there's a lot of games that are being made where it's like, oh, your choices influence the game. And while that's a great thing and I love it, I mean, Telltale, like you said, is a fantastic example of it. They're one of the ones that's doing it really right now. They're one of the best at it. But a good linear narrative, like Dash said, Last of Us, unbelievable. These types of games, that there are a few of them that I would call a masterpiece, but Last of Us on top of that list, definitely.
Oh yeah.
But I'd go with the linear if I had to pick one of the two, because it's tough to do a really great linear narrative.
I thought for sure you would choose branching, because that's all you post on your channel. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's kind of my shtick too. You know, it's what I like, and for a game, it lends itself well. I mean, that type of narrative is perfect for a game, but from an artistic standpoint, because that's my base of study too. I studied English literature. A fantastic linear narrative, I mean, you can't beat it when it's done properly. But again, they're few and far between.
So I grew up with the Uncharted series. That was like my first like main series.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was so engrossed in that. I've already told my frustration with Uncharted 4, how it came out on the PlayStation 4. I don't have one, so it's just like, okay, I'm not going to bother. But
yeah, exactly.
But like I grew up with that kind of game, right? Like if I was going to play a game, that was basically what you did. Is you had this, like, this is your goal. You just got to, beat all the bad guys and do that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So Uncharted was like that was the stuff. So whenever I see a game and it's a linear narrative, as long as it's done well, it's so good, right? Because what happens is when you have something where it's just one storyline, the developers can really think about it, really get into detail, and figure out like, okay, this is the outline, this is the story. Like you're right, like they're basically writing like a movie, but it's really long. And if you have something like that, you can't beat it with any like branching thing, because to develop a branching game, you have to go into so much more detail and all this kind of stuff.
100%. I heard something about Telltale games, like just one episode. I don't know if this is accurate, but the scripting that they have to do just for one episode is something like several feet high of pages, because they have to accommodate all of the different branches.
Oh yeah. Any game like I've seen that you do that with, there's if there's any sort of branching, there's always a huge script because you have to consider every not just branch, but what possible ways will the player approach that branch? Will
And
they
the
get
future
really
branches
far in?
too.
Exactly, because biggest thing I always think about is if you have a branch that gives away any information, because I like to do that with like bonus information. Oh, you don't need to know this to enjoy the story, but it'll help. The first game I ever played that had a story that really pulled me into where I wanted to learn every little thing was Final Fantasy VII. And I went back, I played it the first time, played straight through, and I'm like, well, I want to know all these side things. And they have to consider, well, when will you go back? Will this be, will this make sense at certain points? Will the player coming back to this point, will it kind of sync up? And that's just from a narrative standpoint. Add in the gameplay aspect. Well, how are we going to balance this at different points of the game? Or are we? Are we going to let the player show up here 20 levels too early and just get rocked and realize, oh, there's something big over there. And these are all things that kind of have to get developed out and such. But yeah, when it comes to just the story side of things, I mean, you look at old novels like Choose Your Own Adventure book, their stories are fairly simple because they only have so much space and they have to provide same thing, branching.
Precisely.
So if you have a linear path, you have so much more medium that you can work with versus every branch taken away from the core story.
Yeah, exactly.
Because inevitably too, in a branching path, it's just the nature of writing. Some writing is going to be better than other writing. You might take one path and maybe that's not the best written path. And then the person who's experiencing it is getting a lesser experience.
Exactly. Especially in a game, because it's not just one writer. It's usually a team of writers.
Yep. Precisely.
Each one writing different things. So you may go, oh, this area felt kind of weak. And it's like, well, maybe that was a novice writer versus the experienced people working on the main path.
Exactly.
Typically they all work together and check each other, but when you get to that crunch period at the end of a project, you kind of just go with what you got.
Depends who's on the lead on the project for that particular episode. It is what it is.
And with the project, as a project advances, people come and go because games take years to make. So whoever's on at the end may not have been there at the start.
Yeah. I think I have to bring up, there's this one called Beyond Two Souls. Have you guys heard of that one?
I've heard of it. I hadn't had a chance to play it.
I'm pretty sure it's the same developers as Heavy Rain. I'm pretty sure. And it has, what they did is they had like Willem Dafoe, and I think, I can't remember her name, but like they had a couple big actors that were like did the whole thing, right? And it was like kind of branching. It was right in between because the ending and all the way through, it was like the plot points were very similar, but there was like just minor variations, right? And so this is the kind of thing where that game was really well done for every branch, in my opinion, right? Because they had like really good acting, really good story. It's that kind of like middle ground where they were able to put enough time. I think that's kind of like the sweet spot for me. And yeah, all right. So now we're gonna bring up open world games, guys. So like Skyrim and Middle Earth: Shadow of Mordor. Have you guys played that one?
Yep, both of them.
Oh, nice. So these games, right? What they have like all these side quests. Oh, also I gotta mention Fallout. What am I talking about? But they have all these like side quests, right? And so the main quest it ends up happening where like you start on the main quest and it's like, okay, let me just try and find all these 12 donuts that are hidden throughout the land or something ridiculous like that. Like so open world games. I don't know. What do you guys think about them? Do you think they should be like more focused, or do you like how they're set out?
Barton, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I can say that I like them. I mean, obviously, I have a long-running series on Skyrim on my channel, and it's a lot of fun. Skyrim was a fantastic game. Everybody loved that game. I mean, it had its little foibles here and there, but for the most part, fantastically developed game. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Look at how many times it's been ported. Like, Bethesda is probably going to port it straight into our bodies. I mean, there's memes joking about that everywhere. It's the way it is. But I mean, I love the game. It is what it is. I consider it a separate kind of genre. Because you can get a lot of mileage out of it for other things besides the story. I mean, the story was still good. It had a good narrative, but it was a different beast altogether. It's a different type of game. It's truly immersive because of the fact that you have so much open choice. I can say that I enjoy them, but I classify them differently than I would games that have a nice straight narrative, or even those types of branching path games where your choices matter.
Okay.
It's a different thing entirely.
And
Yeah, I agree with the game, especially like Skyrim. I always consider it. Like you said, it has a great story, but it's a fairly simple story.
Yep.
But it also has like 7 other stories going
Mhm.
on. So you get multiple stories. Okay, well I'm gonna go. Spoiler: I'm gonna go deal with the dragon. Alduin or whatever his name was. But
Yeah.
you can also deal with the Stormcloaks and all that's going on. And if you don't want to do that, well, you can skip most of that.
Mhm.
They're really, especially with, I noticed that mostly, because I'm doing a playthrough of Fallout 4 now,
Ooh,
and I'm
nice.
noticing it heavily in that one that it's more about world building than it is any of the story.
Mhm.
And the game kind of doesn't even really push its story. The whole point of, or at least as far as I'm into Fallout 4, has been, your son was taken, go rescue him, which you would imagine is a huge, this has to happen.
Yeah.
I'm like 25 hours in, and every now and then I'm like, I should go find my son.
Yeah.
But there's so
Yeah,
much
exactly.
world building stuff I keep finding. It's like, what's this going to lead me to? Let's go over there to that. And they can do it simply with the compass. A little icon appears at the bottom, and your brain goes, I wonder what story is associated with that.
Yeah.
And you go and find it out. So
I forgot about the Witcher series entirely, but the Witcher series is another like Witcher 3 was like pristine, right? I don't forget so like Skyrim, right? Because this is the one that I know the best. I think is so it has all these like mini side ones where it has I think the Thieves Guild and like the uh, Dark Brotherhood or something. I don't know. Have you guys played through those quests? Have you guys gotten into them?
I played through some of them. I actually surprisingly haven't played as much Skyrim as I did Oblivion and Morrowind.
Okay.
But I loved Skyrim. Skyrim was weird. I loved it the whole time I played through it. Finished it and then didn't play it again for like 2 years. But with Oblivion, I played through it like 20 times in a row, and I honestly could not tell you why. Like there was no definitive. Like if you asked me, Skyrim's a better game.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I think it was the competition on the market at the time. When Oblivion came out, I really didn't have anything else pulling my attention. But when Skyrim came out, I'm looking at my wall of stuff just from that era right now, and there was tons of other stuff on there. I still have shrink wrap that I haven't had to play yet. So it's like there was just, okay, cool, I finished it. Let's go to check out another story or another game.
Yeah.
And I just never had a chance to come back heavily to it.
Like I never played Skyrim for too long. I think I have like 50 hours in the game, something like that. But there were so many like quests that I just didn't get involved in. There was so much to it, right? Because I think there's the story in Whiterun of the Grey Mains and some other house.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a battle between houses in Whiterun, and then there's the Stormcloak versus Imperials. There's all that entire quest line, and each of these carry their own story. They all have their history, and the lore behind Skyrim is incredible, right? So all this stuff. I think that open world games probably are the most in depth because to develop an open world, you really have to create the entire world, right? You can't just create what the character is what the player is gonna see. You also have to create all this backstory stuff because if the player ever investigates, there has to be some backbone to what they're seeing, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely.
So I would almost say like open world games are kind of the strongest story out of them all because it's actually like you're in an entirely different universe.
I would say that open worlds have the strongest potential for story, but they take a lot more time.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned in Skyrim, that game was in development for an ungodly number of years because they had so much they had to build out. They can give it a small world, and they can build like look at Horizon Zero Dawn when it came out.
Ooh, okay.
Very, very linear story, but then there was a bunch of little side things you could go do, but it was a fairly small world. But if they took that and made that the size of Skyrim or the size of, any of these other large open world games, Just Cause, like that huge world, then it would have, if they had the same amount of content, it would have felt very diluted. And you'd have that problem where, I can go all these places, but why? There's really no drive there as a player. One game that got around that surprisingly well and it just had a re-release, was Shadow of the Colossus. Very straightforward, simple game, massive world, very little in it aside from just like geometry that kind of told a story just from, I wonder what happened here, and just let your mind go with it.
Yeah.
It didn't explicitly tell you anything.
Cool. And like with open world games, I think the one really big strength about them is like replayability. Because if you play through the main quest of the game, you still haven't touched like 90% of everything else, right? And so, what do you guys think for linear narrative games and these kind of branching games? What do you guys think about the replayability? Because if you play it once, don't like you kind of just know that you kind of already know the story, and what is the point of playing through again, right? So what do you guys think about replayability in these styles of games?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, for a linear narrative, I mean, it's pretty much straightforward. I mean, you've played it one time, but at the same time, how many people buy a book and then they end up rereading that book 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
You know, it's there's a comfort element to it, and I mean, for a really truly great story, that's something that I mean, I've done it before. I mean, it doesn't even need to be a great narrative as long as the game is fun. Take a look at those old school NES games. How many times did I play Mega Man 2? You know, like something along those lines, one of those retro bit games. It's you replay it. It's not a fantastic story, but it's enjoyable. It's the enjoyment. Branching games, there's a little bit more replayability there. But I mean, to a certain extent, you know, you like you mentioned, you do know the gist of the story, because a lot of those branching games, they tend to meet in the middle. I mean, like there'll be small changes based on your choices, but they generally take you to the same place. So,
yeah, it's like I think the diagram is like it's like a diamond almost, where you know it starts at a tip, you know, and then you go through the story. You can go any part in the middle, and there's like this big middle section, and then eventually it gets to the point where everything just starts narrowing back towards the one final endpoint. And I think that's common with a lot of games. Like I think it happens in The Walking Dead by Telltale Games. No spoilers, but like you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think with a lot of the story-based games, I mean, on your first playthrough, the story is the critical part. I mean, that's what, especially if you know it's a story. Like you look at Heavy Rain, you go in that knowing that's a story-driven game. Your second playthrough and subsequent playthroughs don't rely as much on story as much as on gameplay. If the game was fun, you'll go through the story again and maybe see if you can detect little hidden Easter eggs throughout, even if it's not a branching story. Just, oh, there's something on that desk in the first part of the game that references something near the end that you won't notice until that second playthrough.
Yeah.
So you can get some stuff like that. But I think a lot of the replay value for any of those games also comes with stuff like difficulty settings. I mean, while their stories aren't the most mind-blowing, you look at games like Call of Duty or any sort of SPS with a story aspect to it.
Yeah.
You play, okay, I'm on normal mode, play through the story, and then, okay, now, or look at Halo. Now I'm going to play Legendary. I'm just going to see if I can get through the story on the hardest possible setting. And that helps pull a lot of players back as well, I find. I've done that where I've played even Heavy Rain. There were, I'm going to go see what this slight difference is here, or play, and it can be player created challenges as well. I did Final Fantasy VII when I was younger without saving, just see if I could make it beginning to end without saving the game.
Wow.
And that was just a player run challenge I did to myself because I had read something in a magazine that made me think about it, but I was like, wow, I know the story, but I wonder if I can do this challenge within the gameplay of it. So if you have a great story and okay gameplay, you're going to have a game people play once and think that was great and then put it on their shelf.
Yeah.
If you have a game with decent story and excellent gameplay, you'll get that replayability coming back to it.
Yeah. Another thing is like a lot of games have these kind of like optional things that you can do. So like for Remember Me, which is a game that I absolutely love.
I love that game.
I'm enjoying watching it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm playing on my channel, and they have like these little Mnesis memories. I think they're called. I can never pronounce it because it has an M and an N right next to each other. Like, why would you do that to me? I don't understand. Okay, but the idea is there's they're little memories that are just lost in the city, and if you find them, you can kind of go through and learn a little bit about the world that's there. And these kind of things, like the first time you go through, like you don't even pay attention to those. But now that I'm playing it again, I'm like, oh man, I want to learn all about this, right? So I'm going off the path and finding all these things that I would have never found before. So really
exactly. Cool. I did that with BioShock when it came out. Played through the first time, and that, you want to talk about an amazing story. That game was fantastic. But it had all those I don't remember what they called them, Vox recordings or whatever. And the second time I went through, I tried to make sure I could find everything that I could see there. And then like, oh, what's going on in this part of the city? So you get that replayability from kind of the player wanting to do the world building, as well as the player wanting to impose their own challenges. Because sometimes developers, we look at ways to, how can we allow for these challenges to the player in interesting ways? What can we take away from them that gives them the option for something harder and stuff like that?
And I also want to bring up Life is Strange because that game is also amazing because they have this like thing where you're a photographer, right? And you're
Mhm.
like a prospective photographer, and throughout the
Hmm.
world there's like these photos that you can take, And so I'm going through and I'm like, oh man, I need to find every single photo, and it's kind of bad now because what I'll do is like in the middle after a section, it's like, oh no, did I miss a photo? Oh man, and like I won't care like whatever the main plot line is, like something really dramatic happened. It's just like, no, I missed the photo. I don't know. Maybe that's bad, but I love that
It's
little.
those are good, especially
Yeah.
if it tells you.
Mhm.
Like that gets you wanting to go back when it's like, hey, you got 27 out of 28 of these things. It's like, oh
Yeah.
crap. Now I got to go back and do it again.
And I love in that game that you can play through like individual. I think Telltale does this as well. You can play through like the whole game is made up of episodes, right? You can just play through at
Mhm.
any part of the episode. So if you know you missed something in one of the episodes, you can just go back and play just that part. So I really like that.
Yeah, they have a feature called well, I don't think it's in all of their games, but I can tell you in the Batman game, there was a feature called Rewind.
Oh yeah.
So you could go back a little bit if there was something that you needed to try again.
Ah, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, oh man, because Life is Strange. I don't know. I gotta stop talking about Life is Strange. It's too good, man. I'm enjoying it way too much.
I really have to play it, and honestly,
here.
I haven't gotten to watching your Life is Strange videos yet
Yeah.
because I know for a fact that it's one of those series that you would really want to sit down and give the proper attention,
Yeah,
and I
man.
haven't had the time to do that yet. So I want to sit down when I get some time, and I'm going to really watch the hell out of that because Life is Strange seems like a great story
I don't
from
know.
what I've heard.
I'm gonna recommend if you're gonna play it, don't watch me play through it because I watched it, right, and there's a really big spoiler that I'm really upset that I know because it's such a huge plot twist, and now that I know it, it's
Hmm.
like it kind of sucks because it's like, oh man,
Yeah, I've been thankfully avoiding as much as I can on that because I have it on
Mhm.
my list of stuff to put on my channel. And somebody warned me, they're like, "Do you plan on playing it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they go, "Okay, don't look anything up."
Yeah,
So now, even if I'm on a website and it's like, "Hey, Life is Trained," I just close it. Nope.
yeah, exactly. No, good because
You know what? I think I'll just watch your series on it and leave it at that because I have so much stuff on my plate right now. It's
Yeah.
too much.
Dude, I love the game so much though because there's so like I feel like it's just you can do everything, right? Like I'll just spend like half an hour in one location talking to everyone, finding every nook and cranny, and like getting all these like weird interactions that you didn't know were possible. Like I don't know. I'll give an example, I guess, because it's not really a spoiler. Is there's the courtyard outside of Blackwell Academy, right? And there's these skater dudes. Okay, so it's like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, they ask me questions. It's like, oh, do you want to see one of these, fancy skater terms? And I'm like, I have no idea what to say. So you mess it up, and then they say, oh, you don't even know what it's called, right? So you have to now you know the information. So you go back, try again to do the conversation, and then you're like, okay, I want to see this specific trick, right? And the guy is like, okay, Justin, you're doing this, okay? So he gets up, goes on a skateboard, and completely fails the trick, whacks himself in the groin with his skateboard. And dude, I literally just laughed for 5 minutes straight because I was not prepared, man. That was great. I love that. Just those little moments in those kinds of games. All right. So do you guys have any ideas for stories that would make a good game? Like I don't know. This is really open ended, and I have an idea, but I don't know. Do you guys? And have you guys ever thought about this? Like a modification on a game?
I think about it all the time. Like
Oh yeah.
I mean, like doing game stuff, you're always looking at things and going, "Oh, how's this gonna modify and stuff?" So yeah, I'll play a game and I'll be like, "Oh, I wonder if they changed this element, how would that affect the game?" One thing I love games that get into, stuff that'll question things that are sometimes commonplace or whatnot.
Yeah.
Or stuff like one of my favorite. I'm looking at my PS2 wall right now. One of my favorite game series on there is the Xenosaga series, and because it pulls a lot from like the Christian belief system and all these other belief systems that gives it a fantasy effect. No matter what your belief might be, it takes it to a whole new area. And I always thought that was very interesting. So I like seeing games that can do stuff like that and kind of spark that interest. Or looking at the Metal Gear series, I'm like, hey, I wonder what would happen if these mechs were more commonplace, which gets into more your Battle Gear kind of games and stuff. But what if it was done in this style and throw gameplay elements into it even? So it's like, okay, now these guys are virtually run. So now your player or your character never has to leave their base, but they control these massive battles. Well, how do you create a human weight to it? So
Okay.
maybe if they die in combat, they could die in life, stuff like that. And so, and that's kind of, I'll start from that mechanical. Partly comes from being a programmer, so I'm like, how would I implement these features? And then I'll start building a story. Well, why would this occur? Maybe there's a spiritual connection. Your soul goes into this robot, and sometimes it can't come back. So now you have this whole mechanic. And then, well, what would have led the world to this? And that's kind of where I would start building a story from, is what questions would I want answered? And then I'll start answering them and see where I end up.
Yeah, nice. Okay, that's cool. So you mentioned really quickly you're a programmer. Have you ever like built a game or anything like that?
Yeah, I've worked for a few companies in the industry. I've done work for stuff like that. I've been worked on the Sims franchise, some EA Sports stuff here and there, Marvel, different areas like that.
Is there any like game that you would want to work on, like, or any genre that you'd want to work on?
When you've done this as long as I have, and if you just talk to anyone in the games industry, it's like I'm happy to have a job. But no,
Okay.
If I could pick any project to work on, I mean, I would love to do a project with Hideo Kojima. I love the Metal Gear franchise. I'd love to work alongside him. But also, I'd love to work on like Forza because I'm a car guy, so I'd love to just make a car game.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, working on sports franchises was my entry. That's what I started with, just because you need a job, and it was it was fun. I love the people I worked on, and the project was really cool. But that's probably like the bottom of my list of where I want to end up. But yeah, no, working on like a Final Fantasy or any kind of major RPG like that, working for BioWare would be awesome. BioWare, I know people there. Yeah, I would love to have worked on the Mass Effect franchise back in the day. That would have been a killer opportunity had I been able to pull that off. But yeah, so really anything with an intense story or racing.
Like two like not related things at all, but either of
them.
No, not
all. I got if you give me a really good story-based racing game, but I've never really seen that done, so I don't expect that to happen.
Not likely, no.
I don't know.
I've seen it attempted, but never done quite where I'd want it to be.
And Cyberbard, do you have any story ideas for games?
Well, I don't know. Like, obviously, as you know, I'm really into this whole Telltale sort of way of doing things lately, and I'm on a super kick for that. But I would love to see adaptations of classic or contemporary fantasy series in a good game setting. You know, like I can tell you that Brandon. Are either of you familiar with Brandon Sanderson?
Yes, actually,
no.
I watched about 3 of his lectures online. That's about it.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Well, Brandon Sanderson is the one who finished Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time epic fantasy series.
Oh, okay.
And he has his own sort of massive setting that he created. I mean, people think in the industry that he's a bit of a robot because he consistently churns out books of really high caliber somehow on a regular basis. So it's like every year he's publishing 1 or 2 books, and they're not just little books either. These are like paperweights, and people are like, how the hell does this guy do it? But anyway, he has this massive world build that he did, because he's really good at world building.
Yeah. That's what I watched the lecture on. Yeah.
That's it. And it's called the Cosmere. So the principle behind it is that there are all these different planets in the universe, and it's a shared universe called the Cosmere, and they're all related by these intricate magic systems that vary depending on the planet that you're on. And the secret history of the universe is that there was a god called Adonasium that was destroyed by a certain number of people. I think there were 12 of them.
Okay. And
they each took a shard of that god's power representing a different aspect and populated different worlds because they became like gods unto themselves.
Nice.
So I can tell you that they're doing a Stormlight Archive VR right now, and there's demos of it up, and it looks freaking awesome. And I feel that those settings, it's so rich and detailed that they would lend themselves well to a story-heavy RPG of some sort, like a Telltale style game, because it's a little far from what they've been doing. They've been going way more towards the comic book side of things.
Yeah. Like The Wolf of
Guardians of the Galaxy,
Something like
Walking Dead, Batman. It's all comic stuff.
Yeah.
The heavy pop culture area.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where money's at, so it's understandable.
For sure.
That's really-
And that lends itself well to that genre as well. But I'm saying that if I wanted to see something, it would be a setting like that with a story-heavy game element. That would be pretty damn cool. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
One series I'd love to see come back, and it kind of did briefly, was Shadowrun. I'd love to see another really intense Shadowrun game.
They've been making a whole bunch of them, though. There's a bunch of these little Shadowrun games that they've released in the last couple of years, even if you check on Steam.
Yeah, they did the Shadowrun and Dragon something or other. I don't remember the official releases, and people could make their own things out of that. But I'm talking that was like very small 2D tactical.
Okay, you're talking like a straight
full-on
RPG setting.
Yeah, straight RPG, but in that cyberpunk Shadowrun.
I feel you there. Shadowrun is awesome. I love Shadowrun.
One of the things I loved the most about Mass Effect was that it had a fantasy feel, but it was in space. And it wasn't, elves and orcs and all that, which I love, but we're gonna make a RPG in a video game. Okay, well, it's fantasy. It's just by default. We're slowly coming out of that, but for the longest time, that was just the default. And that's one of the things that made me originally notice Final Fantasy VII back in the day, because I popped it in. I'm like, whoa, we're on a train. We have swords and guns. This isn't fantasy. And then I got into it. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. So I really would love to see Shadowrun make another comeback as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of cyberpunk genre. It's an underappreciated genre. Surprisingly enough, I mean, you've got all these classics related to that genre, and but just nowadays, it's not touched as much. So I'm really looking forward to what CD Projekt Red is doing with that cyberpunk game that's coming out. That is going. I don't even know anything about it, but just based on what they've done with The Witcher, I am salivating, waiting for that game to come out.
Oh, I'm planning to take some time off whenever it comes out. Just have like a 4-day weekend of just playing it.
Oh, nice. All right, guys, are you ready for my story idea?
I would love to hear your story idea.
I don't know. It might be laughable. We'll see. Okay, so it's called, or I don't know what it's called, but it's like the theme is it's a dungeon or it's a roguelike dungeon, and the idea is you're an enchanter, right? So you can enchant your swords. Do you guys know the mobile phone game Osu? I don't think it's mobile phone, but
I'm not familiar with that one.
I'm familiar with it.
It's like a skills. I think it's like music, and then as you go, there's like random actions that you have to do, like quick time events almost.
It's a rhythm game.
Yeah. Okay. That's the name. So like when you enchant, it's just like a little 10-second thing, right? And the better you do, the better your enchantment. Okay, on your sword, right? This isn't really important. This is just like the mechanic of the game. So as you go through the dungeon, you get better at enchanting, and your character becomes better. And there's like these demons and monsters, right? And as you kill them, you get their souls, and then you use the souls to enchant, okay? But as you go through, there's like these dead bodies all over the place, right? And there's notes, like torn out, ripped up pages, with like a story, like a little diary entry on them, right? And you just encounter more and more of these as you go through the dungeon. And eventually, okay, when you get to the end of the dungeon, there's like a big old plot twist, right? And you realize that all these notes actually fit into your own journal, right? So you've been trapped in this dungeon for ages, right? And you're between life and death. You're trying to beat all of your demons down. And now once you made it to the end, you finally defeated all your demons. Okay, and you've made peace. And you
So it's a little bit of a Dark Tower-esque twist?
Sure, I don't know that game.
It's not a game. Dark Tower is Stephen King's magnum opus, the 7-book series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but
I've not heard
there's a little bit of a karmic cycle thing going on there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right,
I like that, though. I like that idea.
Because I don't know, because I was grade 12 computer science. Okay, we had to make like a game, and it was like we basically made Farmville. That was our game. Okay.
Nice.
And then I was like, all right, guys, we gotta make something better than this. All right, so this was like my idea, but it never actually came into fruition. So that's unfortunate. But
nice. When I was in college, we had to build a game, and we made The Labyrinth, the David Bowie movie, into a video game.
Oh, cool! Wow.
We had it was funny because we used artists were from other parts of the school. So it was a school called Full Sail down in Florida.
Oh,
I got you.
And we were in the game development project, but you'd like work with the computer animation guys to get character models and stuff. And we reached out to a friend of ours that we had known throughout the course, and we're like, "Hey, we're working on a game. You want to model a level for us?" He's like, "Yeah. What level? What do you need?" And we're like, "Well, we need an MC Escher painting in 3D." And the guy, he was like, "You understand that's not possible, right?" And I go, "Well, we need it."
It's like you're making it possible.
Yeah, figure out how to make it happen. He goes, "Okay." And we ended up with, for a quick student project, it ended up coming out okay. But yeah, just the look on his face was like he's excited. Like, we did an MC Escher painting. Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure what you could do is you could make it like a kind of like Portal. So if you get to the top, you just get teleported back to the bottom type thing. Or I don't know.
The plan was actually that it would be a much larger level than it looked. And it would, you just at glancing at, you would see what looked like paths you couldn't, that shouldn't exist. But as you advance through,
okay.
you were actually on a more level plane. It's just to the player, it wouldn't appear that way because we'd use certain set pieces rotated to feel like you were moving around.
Okay, cool.
But because we had like 3 months to do the whole thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was, we ended up with a whole dynamic labyrinth system. You'd walk through doors and things would change like they did in the movie and such. So
I got you.
it was fun. But yeah, that was my favorite part, was really just asking that guy for that that level. That was the best.
You could do I'm just trying to think of ways to. I think you can do like 4-dimensional modeling or like I don't know. I saw this really briefly, and they had like a VR simulation of 4-dimensional space, and I think if you did that, I don't know how it worked at all. Okay, it was ludicrous, right? But I think if you could do that, right, you can get from one part in the 3D world to another part really, really quickly. And that was what they did in the VR, is you could like get in there, and it took a million years to generate, but it was pretty funny.
Nowadays,
I like your idea though, random guy.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I picture it like a roguelike.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
You know,
it's like Enter the
time,
Gungeon, but yeah.
Yep. Every time, if you die, you start up again or whatever, and you've got a whole other set of skills. I can see it happening.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of what was that game on the Zombie on Wii U, where you made it so far, and if you died, your next character would come across you as a zombie further into the dungeon, into the game. You'd have to like, oh, I died here last time, so there's a zombie there with all of my equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I never played the game that much because I actually didn't care for it, but the idea I really liked on that, and that's what I'm thinking of with your idea.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, and that brings us to our last question, guys. All right, what is your favorite story? Okay, of all time, doesn't matter where it's from. What is your favorite story ever? All right.
Oh, that's a tough question.
Oh man,
that's like asking what's your favorite
so
game.
many.
That's just.
Oh man, I'm gonna be pretty mainstream. Okay, and I'm gonna say Harry Potter because I don't know. I read the books a few times. All right, it's so good. It's so in detail. There's always more things that you could learn about the book every time you read through. I don't know. Pretty mainstream. Anyone else? You guys have a better?
Dash, you want to go with this one first?
Sure. I mean, oh man, I'm gonna answer it and then immediately change my mind. But
that's probably what I'm going to do too.
Yeah, we're just probably gonna mention this story is fantastic.
All the well-known ones. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go a little mainstream as well and just say Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's it's just if I had to pick one specific one, Empire Strikes Back. Okay. Even though it kind of ended on a cliffhanger, it was just there's never a moment there I wasn't like, oh, what happens next? What's going on? And the whole lore and everything to Star Wars, I'm always learning stuff new. Where I thought I knew something and didn't until I meet someone who knows more about it than I do. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know anything. And I'll start researching it again. So, yeah, I'd have to go with that.
Yeah. All right, Cyberbard, what you got?
I'm having a tough time picking because there's so many great stories, and we're actually in a really great time right now for contemporary speculative fiction. Speculative fiction, in case you don't know, that's the horror, fantasy, sci-fi genres.
Okay.
I mean, one of the authors right now that really stands out to me is Joe Abercrombie. I don't know if either of you have read any of his books.
No, I have not.
What's his most famous one, or like one that we'd recognize maybe?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember the name of the trilogy. The first book in his series is called The Blade Itself.
Yeah. Okay.
And that one's very, very famous. And funny enough, it's not his trilogy that really struck me, because what he did was his first 3 books were a trilogy, like a solid trilogy, and then he released 3 books afterwards that were loosely connected because they had certain characters that reappeared in all 3 books, and they're all kind of genre stories. You had Best Served Cold, which is a very Count of Monte Cristo-esque revenge story. And then you had The Heroes, which is one of the most scathing criticisms of war that I have ever read, and he does it so well.
Nice.
It's just unbelievable. It's basically the whole book is two armies fighting over a hill, and there's no good reason for it. It's just two giant armies fighting over this one hill that means literally nothing, and thousands of lives are lost, and it's so scathing and well written. But the one that struck me was his third book in that loose trilogy. It was called Red Country, and the story is a Western at its core in a fantasy setting. So he takes this, it's like Unforgiven in a fantasy setting.
Oh,
okay.
And it's beautiful. It takes one of the characters from the first trilogy that he wrote, a barbarian named Logan Ninefingers, who is
How
living
many fingers
in
did he have?
Huh?
How many fingers did he have? Really quick.
9?
Oh, really? Oh. That was gonna be like a joke where he actually had 11 or something. Okay.
No. He was called the Bloody Nine. He was missing the middle finger. But he's living incognito as a simple farmer, and everybody picks on him, even though he's a big dude. But everybody treats him like crap, and until his farm gets raided, and then it's just full on Liam Neeson Taken mode, and he just goes to find his kids, his adopted kids, and it's such a Western story. In the end, you're wondering, like, is everybody better off or are they worse off? And it was just such a profound ending. I'm not going to spoil anything, but
Okay.
I teared up a bit. I'm not going to lie. So
wow.
if you want to read something like that, that guy is going places. Joe Abercrombie.
Okay, cool.
I'll have to check him out.
I also want to mention a book called Ready Player One. Have you guys heard of this one?
Oh yes, I just reread it a little while ago.
Oh, perfect. Because they're making a movie of it now, so I'm super hyped. I'm probably gonna reread it again. Wait, just reread it once.
The first trailers of that movie scared me a little bit, but the more recent stuff that they've shown is making me very, very happy.
Because that was like pretty. It was like gamers, right? So I was related to it, or it was relatable for me, I guess. Yeah.
For sure.
So I like that one. And then Last of Us. I cannot not mention Last of Us if we're talking about great stories. Okay.
Last of Us had a really, really good story. I'm not a huge zombie game kind of guy. Like, I'm like, okay, they're neat, whatever. But Last of Us, which zombie, not zombie, whatever, it fits in that genre. And I was blown away by it. Of course, I also lived in Salt Lake at the time. So there's a brief period, spoiler, of that game that takes place in Salt Lake. So I was like, I know this area. I know that road.
One of the biggest triumphs I thought in Last of Us was not necessarily the narrative itself, but just the interaction between the characters
exactly.
and the emotion that was conveyed in a digital medium like that was unbelievable. They really were fantastic with that.
The characterization in that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They have like these moments in the game where like it almost seems like Ellie's a real person, right?
Yes.
There was this thing where I don't think I'm gonna spoil it, but Ellie wanted she wanted like a toy or something, right? And it was on the ground, okay, but Joel was like, no, it's gonna take up room or something like that, okay? So Joel, like, you play as Joel, right? So as soon as you turn away, Ellie will sneak and pick it up, right? And she'll actually do it in the game, so you can really see it. There's all like these little moments in the game that you can find, like, if you go through it again. So that game is just incredible. I don't know.
I also love the fact that with Ellie, they didn't make her out as just basically an escort quest. She's a young girl, just kind of take care of her. She had her own strengths and weaknesses,
exactly,
and she was believable in that world. People like, she's kind of a little vulgar, whatever. I'm like, she's grown up in a crap world. What do you expect would happen?
She's an actual kid.
Yeah, she is the product of where she's at. I mean, that's exactly believable. So I was hooked on that immediately. I should go back and replay through that.
I feel that way sometimes when I'm playing Walking Dead with Clementine. They did a really good job with her too. Like, she's not like you said, the escort quest. Like she feels like a real person.
Absolutely. I'll say this: taking the best story, quote unquote, in a different direction, because all these have been very kind of serious kind of feels.
Yeah.
Saints Row 2 had an amazing story. It was ridiculous, but a good story can be that as well. It was just every mission you're over the top, like, I wonder what chaos is going to happen next. Really, the whole Saints Row series. I know Saints Row 3 opens with you robbing a bank and you rip the bank vault out on a helicopter because that's what you do. And you're signing autographs because you're famous. It's so over the top ridiculous, but enjoyable the entire time. So I like, it's a good story that like doesn't have to be all dramatic and serious. It can just be silly and fun and still be amazing.
I agree. It's just that the industry tends to go more in the direction of the serious, the gritty, the dark,
Yep.
when they're writing their best material. But I agree with you. It would be nice if they made some more just crazy, fun, upbeat games and put the same amount of effort into the narration too.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, and with that, guys, we're going to end off the podcast here. It's been about 46 minutes, so yeah. Thanks for being here, guys. So we got once again we got Dash, also known as the Bullet Train, on YouTube.
Hey.
And then we got the Cyberbard, who's
Hey everybody, Dash. It was good to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you both. It was a pleasure being here. I've loved the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So, guys, all the links to everyone's channel, they're going to be on the screen right now. Or maybe in like a few seconds. And they're also going to be in the description, so you can go down there and check it out. Also, this podcast is available on SoundCloud, so there's a link to that in the description. The way that works is that you can just play it with your phone off, like your phone screen off if you want. So there's that. And yeah, I'm Random Guy. If you don't know yet, I don't think I've introduced myself. But anyway, yeah, my channel's there. So yeah, any last words, guys?
I believe that's a no.
I'll take that as a no.
I did just hit 100 subscribers on my channel while we were having this conversation.
Perfect.
Hell
Nice.
yeah, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
My dude.
I'm pretty happy. Pick my custom URL and everything.
Perfect. All right, guys. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next Sunday. That's when these come out. All right. Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.